वार्ताक्रम में श्री माँ के सभी बालक बालिकाओं का हार्दिक अभिनंदन है, हार्दिक स्वागत है। श्री अरविंद सोसाइटी हिंदी क्षेत्रीय समिति के ये सब वार्ताक्रम से सितंबर 2021 से चल रहे हैं। ये यात्रा तब हमने शुरू की थी और बहुत ही सुंदर पड़ाव पार करती हुई ये यात्रा आज यहाँ तक पहुंची है। हम सभी इन वार्ताओं से सब महसूस कर रहे होंगे, बहुत लाभान्वित हुए हैं। श्री माँ का जीवन, श्री अरविंद का जीवन और ना जाने साधना के कितने पहलुओं पे ये वार्ताएं हुई हैं। और आज की यात्रा पर जाने के लिए, उस पड़ाव पे झट से पहुंचने के लिए हम सब बहुत आतुर हैं। तो आइए, पड़ाव पे आने से पहले श्री माँ श्री अरविंद के चरणों में अपनी वंदना करें, मातृ संगीत द्वारा ध्यान लगाएं। मेरा मोनिका जी से निवेदन है, कृपया ध्यान संगीत लगा देंगे। धन्यवाद मोनिका जी। श्री माँ के सभी बालक बालिकाओं का पुनः बहुत हार्दिक स्वागत है, हार्दिक अभिनंदन है। हमारी आज की वार्ता, मनोज जी आवाज आ रही है? ठीक, हेलो
जी जी आ रही है, आ रही है मुक्ता जी, आ रही है।
हमारी आज की वार्ता का विषय है चतुर्थ आयाम, फोर्थ डायमेंशन। आयाम का अर्थ है, अगर हम लोग बचपन से पढ़ते रहे हैं, आकार जैसे जब ज्योमेट्री पढ़ते हैं तो दैनिक जीवन में वस्तुओं को आकार के लिए हम जानते रहे हैं, लंबाई, चौड़ाई, ऊंचाई। और अतिरिक्त चौथा आयाम जब जानते हैं तो समय। परंतु जब हम बीइंग की यात्रा पर चलते हैं, सत्ता की यात्रा पर चलते हैं, तो उसका कुछ और ही मकसद होता है। उसका जैसे अगर मोटे शब्दों में जाने तो एक आयाम के जीव हुए जैसे जो बिना मन के होते, जैसे पत्थर है, पौधे, जर्म्स और एलिमेंट्स वगैरह। दो आयाम के जीव हुए जो मन तो है परंतु अवेयरनेस नहीं है, जैसे डॉग है, स्नेक, थोड़े हायर एनिमल। और तीसरे आयाम के जीव हुए जिनमें मन और आत्म चेतना के है, वो है हम जैसे साधारण मानव। और चौथा आयाम जिसका हम आज जिक्र कर रहे हैं, उनमें है वो एनलाइटन बीइंग्स, सचेतनता के साथ, मन के साथ, जिन्हें एकीकृत कालातीत स्वयं की अनुभूति है। या यूं कहें, फोर्थ डायमेंशन इज द लेवल ऑफ कॉन्शियसनेस that in our human words and ideas represent a higher spiritual consciousness. It is a journey from human finite consciousness to infinite consciousness. तो श्री अरविंद और श्री माँ के आलोक में आज हम सबको प्रेरित करने आज हमारे बीच हैं हमारे वक्ता श्री अजीत सिबनिस जी। बहुत ही हमारे माँ के प्यारे बालक हैं, तो उनका मैं परिचय दे दूं। डॉक्टर अजीत सिबनिस हमारी कर्नाटक इकाई के प्रमुख हैं और श्री अरविंद सोसाइटी की एग्जीक्यूटिव कमेटी के सदस्य। वे सोसाइटी के बहुत सारे कार्यों के प्रभारी भी हैं। आप आईआईटी से इंजीनियरिंग विधा के स्नातक हैं, जिन्होंने बाद के वर्षों में इंजीनियरिंग में पीएचडी की। उनके जैसे प्रखर अभियंता की आध्यात्मिक यात्रा से उपजे चिंतन सूत्र सुनना सच में एक दुर्लभ संयोग है। हम बहुत भाग्यशाली हैं, आप हमारे बीच में। मैं बहुत बहुत स्वागत करती हूँ डॉक्टर अजीत सिबनिस जी का। आप आमंत्रित हैं। आज की आपकी वार्ता का विषय फोर्थ डायमेंशन हम सुनने के लिए लाए थे।
Thank you. Am I audible?
जी भैया जी, नमस्कार, जय श्री राम।
Yeah, namaskar. सभी को सादर प्रणाम and good evening to one and all. Today's topic, the fourth dimension, as Mukta ji said, is very interesting topic. Actually, it can be perceived from both angles, that is, from the science perspective as well as from the spiritual perspective. As Guru Bandhus, we are all connected by the common thread of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So I presume language will not become a barrier. Sri Aurobindo in his Life Divine, chapter 2, touches upon two important aspects under the chapter 2 negations. He talks about the materialists' denial of the spirit and spiritualists' denial of the matter. And then he elaborates it quite logically, and then establishes that these are the two facets of the same reality. And unless we reconcile between physics and metaphysics, the puzzle of the universe is not going to be resolved. Now, today's topic is so beautiful. When Manoj Bhaiya told me that I have to speak on fourth dimension, I right away agreed to speak on, not that I know the subject or I'm an authority on the subject, but Manoj Bhai, we can't say no to Manoj Bhai. And that is how we are at this topic. Thank you for inviting me for the second time. We all know, I would like to touch upon this subject from both angles, probably simultaneously. And that is why I have chosen to speak more in English, we all know that space and time, for that matter, all other dimensions became part of the universe or part of us after the creation of the universe is accomplished. So to understand this first three dimensions, or what we call as spatial dimensions, and the fourth dimension with respect to science and spirituality, or physics and metaphysics, we need to understand how the whole thing came about, how the creation happened, how Asat became Sat. And this will let us look at it very briefly from both scientific and from the science and then metaphysics or the spirituality point of view, philosophical point of view. And it is, fortunately for us, there is not a too much of confusion as far as the Vedic wisdom is concerned, or the Vedic interpretation, and the modern science is concerned, as far as the creation of the universe is concerned. That is the starting point of the universe is concerned. Even today, the science doesn't know why the creation happened. That's a different issue, that's a different topic. But let us go. The universe, both the sides agree that the universe began with a big bang. In 10th mandala of Rig Veda, we also have this reference, and there is a reference called Vispot, so that is the big bang. And if you recall the first sentence, first line of Savitri, it was the hour before God's awake. And it is actually what we are talking about is this moment, this instance where the time was not born. Even the gods were not awake. So it is that state, just to try to imagine what condition it must have been. So it is said in both the text or Vedic text and then the modern science, the entire universe was in the state of an extremely hot, dense super ball. This became, we were talking about the creation of the universe. When the whole thing came into the picture, and it was like a super dense ball at the beginning with a lot of temperature, extremely high temperature. And we should know that there are four fundamental forces that govern the universe as on today, as even the science understands. And these are the gravitational force, the electromagnetic force, the strong nuclear force, and the weak nuclear force. These are the four forces. You will come to know why I am bringing about the names of these four forces specifically, very shortly. So these are the four fundamental forces which actually are called the forces or the laws which govern the universe. So these immediately, as soon as the Big Bang happened, as soon as the explosion happened, it is said that immediately after this, these four forces actually got separated, and then the universe started expanding. And this, before the status of the universe before explosion, is called singularity in science, where all the four forces which I mentioned were all together. That means they were all unified. Before the explosion, they were all unified. After the explosion, they were all separated. So this status, when all the forces were unified, it is actually called the status of singularity as per the science. And then the Vedic reference, it is called as Brahma Bindu. So once we understand that, once there was this separation, and then there was cooling, simultaneous cooling, and then the whole universe started expanding. Then came the formation of the stars, planets, satellites, all those, the celestial movements, and then up to the human species, which are the highest evolved species. In between, of course, we had the planet, the plants, and all those things which are a part of the evolutionary process. Now, evolution on the earth was, as per the science, was also actually based on the natural selection. What does it mean in the natural selection? What it means is, now suppose all monkeys did not become men. They could not, all the monkeys did not transform themselves as human species together simultaneously. No, it didn't happen. So what happens is probably a few monkeys, they adopted or the skill of walking on 2 feet, and then they became experts. And then probably few other monkeys also started walking like this. And then we don't know what is that critical mass wanted by the nature. Once the nature feels that, felt that, okay, this is the critical mass, it is enough for me to take the species for a higher level of consciousness or for a better species. And that is how few monkeys got transferred when the critical mass reaches. So here, what is important here is to understand whenever such critical mass, whenever such changes happen from one species to better species, it happens through mutation. There is a sudden change. We don't know what happens. It's not as up to the mutation period, it will be a gradual changes will happen. And suddenly, once the critical mass reaches, this process of mutation happens, and then suddenly there is a change for the better species. Now, what we should understand here, so the time is the first dimension. Even the Stephen Hawking, who is one of the greatest scientists who lived amongst us, he said the universal clock started ticking once the Big Bang, at the time of Big Bang. So that means immediately after the explosion, the time started clicking. So dear friends, the time and space are much, much before us. They are infinite, hence they are infinite, and then time is also eternal. The space is also completely different and also infinite in its characteristic. You know, it's very relevant for us here to remember those lines from the Savitri, which the first line, of course, we said. Then there is, as we go further, it also says that something in the inscrutable darkness stirred, a nameless movement, an unthought idea, insistent, dissatisfied, without an aim, something that wished but knew not how to be, teased the inconscient to wake ignorance. This is how, as per the science, the creation actually starts. Very briefly, we are not going into the details, but let us keep these things in mind. Now, but I would like you people to just remember about the 4 fundamental forces which I talked. And then science also says that this separation of the 4 fundamental forces happened in the presence of a particular specific field called Higgs field. Let us not get into that, but there was a special field. Only once that the platform, the necessary conducive atmosphere was created, maybe in a fraction of a second or in a fraction of a much shorter period, there was a conducive field for all the forces which were unified together to got separated. So now let us come look at the creation from the philosophical point of view. I thought it would be very nice to stick to the story of the mother itself. I mean, told by the mother about the creation. The mother tells this story, which is probably repeated many times, but it is worth repeating here, worth knowing here. The mother says, mother was asked, how did the creation happen? The mother talks about this creation like when whatever we call the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Shakti, the Absolute, the God, whatever we may call, he just decides to manifest. That is, he from Asat to Sat, he decides to manifest, and then he, it's very, he is an infinite. First of all, we should understand that the consciousness or the Absolute, the Supreme, is infinite. So how does the infinite, for the sake of manifestation, I mean, comes down and then becomes finite. So there has to be a process. And then he has to objectify himself. So he undergoes a process. Like he brings out his own consciousness outside, and then he calls it as the consciousness force. So he first, out of himself, he brings out and then formulates what is called the consciousness force, and then what we call it as the mother of gods or the Aditi. I would like to, there is an analogy also mother gives here. It is like, there is a huge potential. Ultimately, there is within the Supreme Lord, he has an infinite potential to do anything. So it is something like that for us to understand. Mother brings in the element of mother the mother is the ordinary mother. That mother has a potential to bring out a child. She is able to bear the child. She is able to grow the child, nourish the child in her womb, and then it is possible, it is potential for her to bring the child into the outer world. So this way, the Supreme Lord has an infinite potential to bring whatever he wants and then manifest it in the outside world or objectify it in the outside world. So before creating this entire universe, manifestation happening before, so he formulates what is called as the consciousness force. And this mother, the Aditi, he tells her that now you go and then create the world. And that is how the world gets created. Now, he says, but there are two important conditions that are put. And what are those conditions? The manifestation should happen under two conditions of joy and freedom. The absolute joy and then the absolute freedom. So this joy and freedom, they become completely a part of the manifestation. Now the Divine Mother creates 4 entities: the light, which is the consciousness itself. Second entity is love. Third is life. And fourth is truth. So these are the 4 entities which are almost equivalent to the Godheads. She creates them and then she pours all her energies, because she is also infinite, because she is the creation, she is the formulation of the infinite Lord himself. So she pours all her love, her light, her life, and her truth, is the pure truth, pure consciousness, into these 4 entities, and then gives them complete freedom to create the universe. You remember the story of Brahma, the creator, and then how Indra, Varuna, Vayu, all of them in the Upanishad story, all of them, they start thinking that they are superior and nobody can, nobody can supersede them. This story comes, and then same thing actually happens to these 4 Godheads or these 4 entities. So the light, after some time, as the evolution progresses, as it marches ahead, the 4 so-called entities, actually, they think themselves, they forget completely the source of their origin, from where they came, how they were created. They were completely, they were wrapped by the ignorance as the time passed, and then they exactly became the opposite of what they are. The light became the darkness, love became the suffering, life became death, and then truth became falsehood. So these are the 8 planes of consciousness, we can say, or the 8 dimensions of the consciousness which get created, and that is the world in which we are all born. The mother, God Mother, the Aditi, the creator, who created this universe, she gets worried looking at the world, and then she goes back to the Supreme Lord and then asks her what is to be done. And then he tells her, go back to their level, get down to their level, and then put in some more light, some more love, some more life, and then some more truth into them. And that is how the Supreme again comes down, descends from the summit of his consciousness, comes into the inconscient level and then pours some more light, love, life, and that truth into these four entities. And then that is how the life begins, and then that is how the evolution starts. So this actually is the story which gives us complete idea how the involution process happens during the creating the world. Now we have used the consciousness term or the consciousness force quite frequently in the past few minutes. Now let us also look at it. Let us understand what consciousness is and what consciousness force is. Let us look at it. As far as understanding by the science is concerned, in the common parlance, it doesn't make any difference for science or for the general understanding of the consciousness. It just becomes an awareness of myself, awareness of oneself, probably awareness of my surroundings, and to a very minuscule intensity or level, we also understand our inside a bit. What is happening? Suppose if at all there is any pain inside the stomach, we are able to understand. We are able to understand our inside, the heartbeats. Only such things we understand and not beyond this. So this is the consciousness which we talk about in the general terminology. Or this consciousness slightly gets elevated, as enhances when it goes, and then we perceive our surroundings through the sensory perceptions, and then probably we start hearing the songs of the bird, and then we start seeing the sunset, all these things. And then when we go slightly higher also, when we go at the mental level, we also will be able to perceive the thinking aspect of it, and then some emotional thoughts and all those things. This is the awareness, what we generally talk about, and then what Sri Aurobindo talks is the exterior consciousness is only understood as far as the science is concerned. So here what we are, as far as the general understanding, there are also not, everybody does not actually come and then agree with this idea of understanding or the definition of consciousness. But consciousness, also the science also feels that consciousness is actually the byproduct of the brain activities. They just equate it because of some complex neural activities. Then the interaction with the brain, the consciousness is evolved. So essentially, in simple terms, consciousness is a byproduct of brain. Some set of people say, and then some people actually say that it is the consciousness which is responsible for the brain activities. And then there are third set of people who actually says consciousness is a fundamental aspect in the existence or in the universe, like time and space, and hence it cannot be explained in terms of physical processes. This actually is the understanding of the science. Now, in terms of Sri Aurobindo, I think how he defines consciousness is something marvelous. Why I'm keeping both the things to you is just to make a point how strongly, how relevant Sri Aurobindo to the modern world even today is. Because whatever is shown, whatever is spoken by him, whatever is given to him, exactly matches, or probably it becomes a guidebook for the scientists even to understand. Now, when he talks about, he explains consciousness, he says that it is a truth consciousness, it is the pure consciousness. It is the consciousness which is the fundamental reality in the universe. Nothing can exist without the consciousness. It is the power, it is not only the power of awareness, but it is also the dynamic energy. It is omnipresent, it is omniscient, and it is omnipotent. No, it is also, he also says that, it is the alpha, it is the omega. And nothing without the play of consciousness can happen. It is exactly it is that consciousness actually which organizes and arranges different activities, even the microcosms and the macrocosms. Everything in the universe is arranged by this. It is actually the Isha of the Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam. It is the essence of Tena Vina Trinamapi Na Chalati. And it is also the it is the grade of consciousness which in us makes us different and then actually unique. No, it is this pure consciousness, which we call it by several names. We call it God, we call it absolute, we call it supramental, the supreme reality, the transcendent, all these things. And then there is also in Vedanta, Prajnanam Brahma, that also is there. So the consciousness is nothing but Brahma. Now we have actually established the relation between the space, the time, and consciousness. So we have understood that it is the consciousness which Sri Aurobindo says that it is not just consciousness, which is the power of awareness, but it is also the creative, the energy. So this is where Sri Aurobindo tells us that the consciousness or the consciousness force is actually the primary dimension which actually has created this universe. It is only after this all other dimensions have created. Now let us keep this for a while. Now let us come to today's topic, and the title of the topic, fourth dimension. All we have right through our school days, whenever we talk about fourth dimension today, suddenly what comes to us? What comes to us is time, isn't it? Oh, fourth dimension, it is time. We look at it only from one angle. Now let us look at it from that angle also. Now, most of the universe, even today, can be explained and can be understood by Newton's laws of motion and then his mechanistic worldview theory. So that means it applies to the macrocosmic world, macroscopic world. So most of the things are adjusted and then understood by him, by this. But this perception of understanding the universe got changed when Einstein came into the picture, and then he presented his general theory of relativity in 1916. It is very interesting to note that Sri Aurobindo and Einstein were actually contemporaries. The period of Einstein was between 1955 and 1879 to 1955. So 1855 to 1979, it was actually the period. And then when Einstein presented his famous equation E is equal to mc square, probably during 1908, and we can probably draw parallels to what Sri Aurobindo had achieved by that time, we come to know that both these great souls had actually quite far advanced in their respective field. Now, some people even call this so he introduced this the fourth dimension, or a new dimension. Let us call it as new dimension called time. I am reminded it is very difficult. Muktaji explained it so beautifully, but on the other side of the facet, I was just trying to understand, and then I just remember how my school teacher used to explain me. Suppose A and B are two good friends, and then A invites B for a lunch. They want to have lunch together. And then A tells B that you come out of your house, walk 100 meters straight, take a right turn, walk another 100 meters. You will find a hotel. So you will find a restaurant. We will go there and then have a cup of coffee. Now, B follows A's instructions. He reaches the location, goes 100 meters and then another 100 meters in the other direction. He reaches. Will they have coffee together? Yes or no. They will not be able to have the coffee together because B finds once he reaches there, it is just not a point, it is a 10-storied building. Now, because A has not told him which floor B has to come, and that means the third dimension is absent there. So he tells him that now the fourth floor in that building. That means now we have 3 dimensions, and then B is able to reach the floor, the concerned floor of the restaurant. Both of them meet and then have their coffee together. But is this a possibility? Did they really have coffee together? There is one more dimension missing. If A had not specified time, at such and such a time we meet and in this place, they would not have met. So that is how the fourth dimension, fourth time as the fourth dimension comes into the picture. Only problem issue here was Einstein gave this concept of time as a next dimension much earlier, much after we understand 3 dimensions. That is why it was the next dimension to explain the world and explain the reality in the universe. And that is how we call
डॉक्टर साहब आपका अनम्यूट करें. हाँ.
Ajit bhai, please unmute yourself.
Oh, you have not heard at all? When did it go?
Just
30
1 or 2
seconds back.
sentences.
Okay.
We can hear you very well.
Okay. Did you hear the story, complete story?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So if now I would like to, so once we have understood the 4 dimensions, it is only the fact that the concept of time as a dimension came much later than the other 3 dimensions. That is why conveniently, for the convenience sake, for the comprehension sake, the time as a dimension was called as the 4th dimension, next to the earlier, succeeding the other 3 dimensions. But in reality, these dimensions, the time as a 4th dimension is completely independent of the other 3 dimensions. I hope you understand. The first 3 dimensions are called the spatial dimensions, which are enough to understand the space or the universe. We as common human beings, ordinary human beings, cannot go beyond this, cannot understand this. But science talks about 4D, 5D, 6D, 7D, it goes even up to 12D. But all these dimensions beyond 3D actually become mathematical models, which is extremely difficult for an ordinary man. For a man who has attained certain siddhis, or he has elevated his level of consciousness, actually, he will be able to understand these higher dimensions. There was also a time in the universe, we can actually try this. We heard the story and we are able to understand the 3rd dimensions and the 4th independent dimension as time. Now, I will go one step, the 4th dimension of the spatial dimension. I will give you an exercise and then let us see whether you are able to imagine that. Now, let us say we are in a small room, and then I will tell you that there is a fan in the small room, and how do you locate the coordinates of the fan in the room? It is very simple. We say in one direction it's so many meters or feet or whatever it is. In the other direction it is so much, and in the height in the vertical direction it is so much. So we have the 3 dimensions, and then we actually locate those dimensions. Now suppose if I give you another next dimension, that there is a big room And then in the big room, there is another small room which is suspended. And then there is a fan in that small room, and that small room is rotating. Now, can you tell me the coordinates of that particular fan? First of all, it is impossible to adjust that. It is not possible without mathematics. It is not possible for us to give the coordinates of that fan in the rotating room of another room. So this is actually a very next step of in the science, and they call it as the tetrasact or something like that. We get a lot of information on the Google in those people who can search for it. Now, the science also, there is a theory called superstring theory, which talks about 12 dimensions also. Now we have understood the fourth dimension as time, and then I would like to recall what we have said. This fourth dimension, time, is only for the convenience sake, because it came to it was made available to us only after the three basic spatial dimensions are given to us. Now, Sri Aurobindo actually says, it is so beautiful here. Sri Aurobindo's observation on space and time is so wonderful. Now, he explains that space and time themselves actually are the two dimensions of the supreme reality. When the supreme being, as we said, in the process of manifestation, he formulates what is called as the consciousness force. And during this process, it seems Sri Aurobindo explains that this supreme reality undergoes two experiences. And it is this time, at this moment, time emerges as his subjective experience, and then space emerges as his objective experience. So beautiful, isn't it? So the space and the time are actually two dimensions or two additional qualities of the Supreme himself. So they are two independent entities, eternal entities, along with time. So these are three independent eternal entities, and that is how everything gets encompassed, inscribed into actually them. Now, he also goes, he goes to this extent, why I call Sri Aurobindo as most relevant here. He also says that the modern science, the cube, why the cube exists, why the cube has got three dimensions. He says that it is the dimensions, the three-dimensional cube appears as a cube only because there is a subtle force within which holds all these three dimensions together. And that is the formula, that is the basic consciousness force, or that is the subtle force actually which holds all these three dimensions. And that is why the cube with the three dimensions appears to us as a cube. It is not only these three dimensions, but it is several such dimensions the Supreme holds for us. And this is how in yoga, and Sri Aurobindo also gives tremendous importance to the time. In fact, in Synthesis of Yoga, he calls Kala as the fourth aid. And in also we have Kalaya Tasmain Namaha is a regular shloka, which actually almost is very familiar to us. We also should understand we are at a level where we have mastered three dimensions only. The length, the breadth, and then the height. If for understanding purpose, if we take these three dimensions, we have actually mastered three dimensions. We can go and come back and up and down and other things, but we cannot do this with time. We understand time as a dimension only in one direction. So that is why we are not able to go back in time and forth in time. We know the time existed because time existed eternally, exists eternally. We know that it existed, but we cannot travel back in time and then understand, except those siddhis. There is an exception those yoga siddhis who have achieved the yoga siddhis. So this control actually over the time will become, and it is mentioned only when a man, the human species, gets elevated to the level of when he becomes Vijnanamaya Purusha or the Gnostic being, he is actually able to travel to and forth from time. Now we have understood actually what the creation is, what the consciousness is, and what are the dimensions, what are the three dimensions, and what actually is the fourth dimension. Fourth dimension is only time, that is only for the convenience purpose, but actually the entire dimension, one primary dimension, one primary force, or the dimension of the Supreme Lord, which holds all these other dimensions, is the consciousness force. And that is the primary dimension of the Supreme Lord itself. Now, we talked about the dimensions of the Supreme Lord. You know, it is very interesting. We have the Vedas say, you know, there is a reference in Bhagavatam. It says the universe of the Supreme Lord is made up of 64 dimensions. The Puranas talk about 14 lokas, and then each loka is considered itself as a dimension. And Mother talks about 12 dimensions. She says, in addition to the 7 chakras, there are 5 more chakras, which when she was experimenting with the Theon, and then she says she could actually identify 12 dimensions. And then Sri Aurobindo talked about 8 into 8 dimensions, which we will see shortly. And in all these things, and it's one more interesting thing is the superstring theory talks about 12 dimensions. And the one more well-known scientist, reputed scientist, Professor Kaku, who is an expert, who is considered as an expert in superstring theory, and who is living right now. You can search Google and then you will find many of his talks on superstring theory and other things. He actually says, it is wonderful. Every time I start working on these dimensions, I end up with these numbers of 8, 12, 16, or the multiples of 4, or the multiples of 8. And I end up with only these 4, 8, and then multiples of 4 and 8. So this is a beautiful condition. And then so now, so far in the discussion, if you really analyze, we have always talked about in the multiples of 4 and 8 only. Now let us understand what is the cosmic dimension. Now, as far as the cosmic dimension, as Sri Aurobindo has put it, he says in the process of involution, when the Supreme came down from the summit of his consciousness, down he comes below, and then in the process there are 8 lokas which are formed, isn't it? The Satloka, the Chitloka, and then the Anandamaya Loka, and then comes the supramental Loka, or the Vijnanamaya Loka. So these are the 4 lokas which belong to the upper hemisphere, or the Parardha. And then God probably thinks that it is not right to keep it open. That is why he puts a golden lid to the bottom of the 4th layer. So see here, even in the Parardha, that is in the upper hemisphere, the 4th dimension is consciousness. You notice it? It is Sat, Chit, Ananda, and then the 4th dimension is the supermind in the Parardha, in the upper hemisphere. So then the golden lid is put, and that is the lid which is the lid between the overmind and the supermind. And in the Aparardha, in the lower hemisphere, the other 4 worlds he creates, again is from the bottom if you go, it is the Annamaya Loka, Pranamaya Loka, Manomaya Loka, and then all supporting all the 3 is the Chaitya Loka. So in the bottom half also, there are 4 lokas and the 4 creations. And then even here, if you see also from the bottom, if you take the matter, and Annamaya Loka is the 1st dimension, 2nd dimension is the Pranamaya Loka, 3rd dimension is the Manomaya Loka, and Chaitya Loka actually. And then the fourth dimension is the Manomaya Loka, which again is nothing but the reflection of the supermind, and hence it is nothing but the fourth dimension also in the aparardha, in the lower hemisphere, is consciousness. So this is how actually we talks about. And then here there is somewhere I could not actually trace the reference part of it. And then when these 8 lokas, when this Sri Aurobindo describes actually he beautifully describes it in the Life Divine, sevenfold chords. In that chapter, he describes how the entire creation happened. And even, in fact, the Sankhya philosophy also talks about 25 dimensions in how the universe principles and the dimensions of the universe. So it actually, the lower hemisphere and the upper hemisphere are the two existences which actually a sort of refraction of the Supreme Lord in the inverted order of the ascent and then descent. So these cosmic dimensions also tell us the fourth dimension in the upper and then lower hemisphere also relates to consciousness and the consciousness force. So this is how the cosmic dimension works out. And when we come to the individual dimension also there are quite a few theories which talk about individual dimension. The Upanishad, the Vedanta talks about the 5 layers: Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and then the Anandamaya Kosha. And then we all have heard the story of Bhrigu and going to his father Varuna and then asking about that, and then how he explains the complete beautiful explanation in Taittiriya Upanishad, which comes and then explaining the few layers of the human construction. But as far as Sri Aurobindo is concerned, he goes much beyond this. And then he says, essentially, if we start studying Sri Aurobindo, we understand that the human construction has 3 systems, and one is the surface system, which actually relates with our exterior consciousness and surface consciousness, our day-to-day life, the mundane life, etc. All these things, this belongs to the outer surface system, which is one of the dimensions. And it is here we have the outer physical, outer vital, and then the outer mental. And the beings is also corresponding beings are there. The second system is actually the subliminal system, which comprises of the inner beings and the innermost being, or the inmost being, what Sri Aurobindo calls. Inmost being is the psychic, and the inner being is like the outer being. We also have inner physical, inner vital, and inner mental. It is this inner physical which Sri Aurobindo also calls it as the subtle physical. So this is as far as the Indian, and we are not, then the third important aspect is the vertical system. The third system, along with the out surface system, which is the outer being. The second system is the subliminal system, which is the inner being, and then the inmost being. There is a third system which actually comprises of ascending and descending series of consciousness within the man, so within the individual. So these ascending and descending series of consciousness actually varies from the inconscient level to the supreme truth consciousness level. Sri Aurobindo, as we know, Sri Aurobindo actually details the gap between the inconscient and the supermind is huge, and that is how he establishes he bridges this particular thing, and he establishes between the ordinary mind and the supermind the higher mind, and then the illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind, and then supermind. And it is at this overmind level where actually there is the overmind, the higher part of the overmind, which is closer to the lower part of the supermind, is actually the interface, and that is the golden lid which we talked about. And then that is the Hiranmayena Patrena Satyasyapihitam Mukham Tattvam Pushana Pavrunu Satya Dharmaya Drishtaye. And it is that golden lid which one should break, and then it is there once the ascending happens simultaneously, ascending and descending of consciousness happens, the supramentalization takes place. So this is the third important system, so the dimension of the individual. Now these are actually, so we talked about the cosmic dimension, and we also talked about the individual dimension. And I was actually thinking, and what other dimensions could we think of? Even probably mother's symbol itself gives an idea that mother symbol, the external petals, actually the mother symbol itself gives us the idea that integral yoga itself is 12-dimensional. Just imagine the mother's symbol, and the integral yoga is actually at the core, and then the outside 4 petals, each petal representing the integral yoga, actually can be understood with the 4 founding pillars. One is the integral Advaitism aspect of integral yoga, and integral Advaitism has got 3, can be explained in 3 sub-dimensions. One is the concept of the absolute, and then the other one is the concept of the real world, which is important. And then it is the reconciliation between the spirit and the matter. This forms the essence of the sub-dimensions of the primary dimension of integral Advaitism of integral yoga. And then the second set of dimensions, the sub-dimensions, comes as Sri Aurobindo's yoga is nothing but the evolution of consciousness itself. And in this evolution of consciousness, if we take as one of the pillars, we have evolution, devolution, and involution in the reverse way. So these are the 3 dimensions. So the third pillar itself, Sri Aurobindo talks about, is the self-discovery aspect. How do we self-discover? What is the self-discovery? Is nothing but the 3 dimensions, individual dimensions, what we talked about, the outer being, the inner being, and the vertical system, the ascending and descending series of consciousness. And actually the 4th pillar is the pillar of sadhana. How do we achieve the sadhana? How do we come to the goal? How do we achieve the goal of integral yoga? This is what Sri Aurobindo talks about. And then the fundamental pillar of this aspect is the triple transformation, which talks about. So in this triple transformation, we have psychicization, and then we have spiritualization, we have supramentalization. This actually, so 4 pillars, every pillar with 3 sub-dimensions, which actually gives us 4 into 3, 12 dimensions of integral yoga. So here, I think it's almost 1 hour, and this is basically what I wanted to say in terms of the dimensions which we are talking about today. And in conclusion, what I would like to say is 4th dimension is actually only for the general understanding purpose. The 4th dimension need not be confused with let the science of for the general understanding, let us go ahead with the time. It is only an additional dimension. In fact, it is the 1st dimension in the other domain. So first 3 dimensions are actually the spatial dimensions. The time as a dimension, it is called phenomenal dimension. And some scientists or some people are also calling it as phenomenological dimension. Phenomenology is a study of consciousness how in human development. So even there, the consciousness is coming into the picture. Few decades back, consciousness was never even considered by the science, and it was not completely left out. But it is only in the recent times the consciousness and the spiritual, the science is also considering very seriously. A lot of studies are going on, and the physics and metaphysics, science and spirituality are showing trends of convergence. And dear friends, I think this is all I had to say about today's topic. And I once again thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share some of the things.
Can I have
And then if there are any questions, we can discuss them. Thank you very much.
Ajit, can I have a quick question with you?
Yeah.
Ajit, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Pradeep Bhaiya. I can hear you.
You have encapsulated the whole of Life Divine today, right?
Yeah.
You packed in 1 hour. You packed in I don't know how many hours today. Right? I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed your talk. I wish you had broken up this talk in maybe four stages.
Yes.
But, you know, what you've packed in is difficult to contain mentally. Right? So, I mean, some of us who have read Life Divine realize that you have, if you put Life Divine before us in a capsule practically, you know. So what I want to understand is when we say that we are limited by time and space, we're talking of the spatial dimension and time, right? We're talking about the two dimensions of this time.
Yeah.
We're limited by time and space. So how do we when we go beyond that, when we go beyond the limitation, the process of going beyond the limitation is going beyond, is evolving.
Yeah. Now going
in that.
Yeah, going beyond the limitation itself is the aim of integral yoga, isn't it? From as we go higher and higher into the consciousness, and once we merge with the Supreme, that is, once the supramentalization happens in an individual, then he becomes one with the infinite. Then we are not limited by space and time. Okay. And that is why I said only one becomes a Gnostic being, he has the control over time dimension. We can come back and then forth. It is because it is only at the supramental level where the complete picture of past, present, and future, all these things, the truth in its entirety and in oneness gets revealed to us. Below that level, it is all the mind game, which, as Sri Aurobindo puts it, even the overmental gods have, it is the union or the unity is not there. The multiplicity still continues even at the overmental level. So it is at the supramental level where the unification takes place, the multiplicity, that famous line of Sri Aurobindo, the eternal unity of the many and the multiple, there is that line, I'm not able to recollect it now. So the many becoming one and the one becoming many happens only at the supramental level. And once we reach that level, we go beyond the limits of space and time.
Yeah. Tell me, you have given the, you mentioned the 12 petals. And you talked of the 12 dimensions.
Yeah.
Yeah, the inner four, the 4 powers that you talk of the mother, basically. And then the outer 12. And you call it the 12 dimensions. 12
Yes.
we call it, and then we talk about the four major powers of the mother. So we're talking of 16 here.
Yes, in a way, yes, 16.
So, but you're talking of the 12 dimension that.
Yeah,
Taking
no,
it-
the 12 dimension of integral yoga, what I did is only my interpretation. I was actually trying to use mother's symbol to understand how can we understand integral yoga using mother's symbol. And then when I was thinking about it, and then this gave me an idea that the mother symbol can be beautifully explained. And then if we fit the dimensions there, the primary dimensions and then the sub dimensions to it, the Sri Aurobindo's integral yoga, you said it has to be split in 3 or 4 units, and probably this can be done in these dimensions under one pillar. I said pillar actually, so they're not the powers of the mother, and as I explained, there is the understanding of the integral yoga. That is how for my understanding I had done that, and then I just shared it with you all.
No, it's wonderful. I'm feeling very, very happy, very enlightened by your entire talk. I really beautifully prepared. And put in just 60 minutes. It's amazing. I've greatly enjoyed this.
Thank you, Pradeep. Yeah, any other question?
कोई प्रश्न हो तो पूछ सकते हैं। अनम्यूट करके पूछ लीजिए किसी का कोई प्रश्न।
मनोज भाई,
जी
मनोज भैया, चैट बॉक्स में तो कुछ नहीं है।
असल में उसको पचाने में इतना हम खो गए हैं सारे।
पचा ही नहीं अभी तक।
हाँ, अभी पचा नहीं है।
I don't know whether it is a bouquet or this thing, because
That's beautiful. Beautiful. So wonderful talk.
आलोक तुलसियान जी कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं। आलोक जी अनम्यूट।
मनोज भाई थोड़ा जोर से, we are not able to hear you.
I can't hear you, Manoj. Can't hear you.
मेरी आवाज आ रही है आप लोगों को?
आ रही है।
हाँ, अभी ठीक है।
मैंने कहा आलोक तुलसियान जी कुछ बोलना चाहते हैं। हमारे बीच
बचाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ।
अभी तो चबा ही रहे हैं कि बचा है?
चबा ही रहे हैं सर।
अभी तो चबा ही रहे हैं। चबाते चबाते इतना समय निकल गया। So Ajit.
हाँ प्रदीप भाई, yeah.
Ajit, अभी तो 60 minutes तो we are chewing only. So the digestion part is going to be much later.
Doesn't matter. I think whole life is there, whether it happens in this life or the next few more lives.
Except the only thing what you have done is you made us chew much more than we can digest, you know, just now.
पर भैया ने गागर में सागर भर दी, इतने सच में इतने थोड़े टाइम में।
सागर भर दी, सही बात।
और
Ajit, can I make a small reference?
Please.
Pavan speaking.
Yeah.
Yes, Sri Aurobindo, you have been talking about the 4 pillars. Sri Aurobindo talks about his 4 pillars. About first is the omnipresent reality. Second is evolution. Third is supermind, and fourth is at the crossroad of our. So this is just for reference.
Yeah. Thank you. It's very nice.
This is again the life divine. What you said, Pavan?
yes.
No, it's in the life divine itself, but generally he speaks about whenever he begins, it's the omnipresent realities, of course, from the life divine itself. And then second is evolution, third is supermind, and fourth is at the crossroads of human Homo sapiens.
You know, actually, it is so marvelous to see Sri Aurobindo. You know, in Life Divine, wherever there are many places he touches upon this space and time, and then the dimensions so eloquently. In Upanishads, his commentary on Kena Upanishad, Isha Upanishad, he beautifully explains how it happens. And then he brings in the comparison And in Life Divine, he goes completely different and he explains it completely. In Letters on Yoga, it is so different. You know, in Letters of Yoga, he makes it so simple and then so that disciples can understand. But in his Life Divine, it really takes a lot of time to understand what he means by space, what he means time. And another beauty I understood is Sri Aurobindo never says it is space and time. Wherever he uses it as time and space. And it is so beautiful to see that it is the time is the first dimension to come into picture and then followed by space. The time dimensions begins immediately after the Big Bang takes place. It is only after the expansion of the universe as it cools down, then the space goes on forming, and then even as on today, as per science, the universe is expanding. That is why we call it as expanding universe. So we are not, the universe is not seeing any contraction. Even till today, the time is also extending, the space is also extending, because our measurement of time is the maximum limit is only in the light years, and as compared to the, if at all there is any horizon to the space, which is the infinite horizon. That's why Sri Aurobindo uses infinite boundaries, or the framework, infinite framework within which we come under. So these oxymorons used by Sri Aurobindo, they themselves are it's a beautiful journey to begin with. And when he starts talking about his explanation, how instinct works, how reflex action works, and then how consciousness evolves from stage to stage, from animals to human, etc. And these several experiments what we conduct, for a simple experiment, what makes the birds, to follow that extremely complicated, simple, beautiful arrow formation. How birds are able to, it's a scene for us. All of us would have seen that arrow formation of the bird. How does it form? How does one bird understands that it should fit in some that? It is finally scientifically also understood that it is a perfect aerodynamic formation when the birds fly in that arrow formation. And in that, the study also is made by using a lot of, every bird was tied with a sensor, and then that kind of a science which has been done. The bird which is not able to fly, or which is not very strong enough to fly, actually comes in the middle. The other birds push it in the middle of the arrow formation, so that the naturally created pressure by the surrounding birds gives that weaker bird to afloat itself. Where does this come from? They have not attended any management course. They have not attended any other thing. From where does it come? We call it and you ask anybody, we just say that it is nature. And where does that nature to the birds come in from? So there are several modern experiments. Why the consciousness, the science is just not converging consciousness. There are several. There is also a beautiful experiment which actually is called, this became one of the documentary films in the National Geographic. A tribal man talking to elephants. Probably you will find it also in the in those YouTubes or something like that. This was actually documented. There is a tribe in Africa, and that tribal people actually can communicate with the elephants. So there was a group of elephants, with wild elephants, which start attacking this tribal group. And in this tribal group, to record these wild elephants communicating with the tribal men, there is a National Geographic photographer who is also there. And then these people call the elephants, and those wild elephants actually recognize the presence of a non-tribal in the group. So they start chasing them. They come, and then the documentary film gets recorded only till the time the camera is broken by the elephant. And then he says, this is where then the tribal people again communicate to the elephants, and then the elephants go back. And when you see these things, science gives a complete different explanation, but isn't it a knowledge by identity? What Sri Aurobindo talks about. This is purely knowledge by identity. That means you identify ourselves, one in all and then all in one. When this concept comes, there is another beautiful experiment which is called instantaneous communication. Instantaneous communication is a highly scientific experiment where they separate the two electrons and then they separate it to a distance be much more than the light, distance of the light, speed of light. So when the spin of the one electron is changed, instantly the other electron changes its rotation, which means to say that it is faster than, there is a communication which happens faster than the speed of the light. So this also actually one of the setbacks to Einstein's theory. Einstein said nothing can travel faster than the light, but there is a communication which travels between the two electrons, which travels faster than the speed of the light. So this is one of the other important experiments which is called as instantaneous communication. So there are several experiments like this where we can go on substantiating and then converging science and spirituality.
Thank you.
There are some 4 chats. If
राजलक्ष्मी जी ने कोई प्रश्न पूछना चाहा था। राजलक्ष्मी मैडम, आप कुछ पूछना चाहती थी? चारू अरोरा जी ने कुछ पूछा है, आप सामने आके पूछ सकते हैं। चारू जी।
जी, thank you, sir. Thank you, Bhaiya. I have read somewhere, a long time back, the 4th dimension is called the Turiya. That is the silence between two sounds, like Om. So is that the same thing?
Yes, I mean that we are talking about the same thing, when we talk about the consciousness in 4 stages of consciousness, isn't it? Awakening state, that is the dream state, sleep state, and then the 4th state is the Turiya state. That is where actually those are the, so this dimension has got a different meaning at every step. One is the dimension, what we talked about as a unit, we talked about as a spatial dimension. Now, suppose if I say Sri Aurobindo has a multifaceted or the multidimensional personality, we have a different meaning for the dimension, isn't it? So these are the 4 stages, the 4 states of consciousness, the waking state, and then the dream state, sleep state, and then the final state is the Turiya state, which is actually the Samadhi state also, which is almost equivalent, where we go deep into it and then forget about ourselves, where the consciousness is working, but we are not completely aware of anything else.
This is Ajit.
Thank you.
Maybe Ajit, can I ask a question? Yeah, you mentioned the elephant, this communication with elephants. There's also a movie called The Horse Whisperer. And now there's a dog whisperer also.
Oh, dog whisperer, yeah.
And horse whisperer. So in fact, now they're communicating with more and more species of animals.
Yes. I mean, the recent Oscar award winning movie, The Elephant Whispers.
Yeah, right.
I think there is nothing but 2 human beings communicating and then completely understanding the languages of the elephant itself. So,
well, there are many more questions, but there's not enough time.
नहीं टाइम का कोई नहीं भैया, किसी के पास प्रश्न हो तो
you were talking so much about the life divine, and you say that Savitri, is life divine in poetry.
Yes, yeah.
So I mean, this is a very loaded statement that's being made, and can you
No,
expand.
according to me, Savitri is Sri Aurobindo's experience as he grew and then touches the supramental level. And then that is why he keeps it, revising it even till the end. So, Premananda Kumarji used to say this beautifully, that, this is, if life divine is, Tattva Grantha, it's completely the Siddhanta, his philosophy, his principles, and all those things actually is in life divine. And then Savitri is like Parayan. It's a daily recitation where it is the experience. Actually, we become one with Savitri. I don't know. So everybody feels differently when they read Savitri.
But when it is said that Savitri is life divine in poetry.
Naturally, because
So what it means, I think, I don't know.
no, what it means actually is in life divine, as I understand Pradipaya, in life divine, he says, let us say if he talks about the possibilities, that life divine, it is possible for an ordinary human being to rise to the level of supramental being, and then it is possible for to bring down the supramental consciousness into the earth consciousness. It is a possibility, and then all the possibilities, descriptives, everything, how it is done, the theoretical aspect of all these possibilities is given in life divine. But how do you do it? Did you do it? Have you done it? Is it possible to do it? That actually is the experimentation done by Sri Aurobindo himself, on himself, and of course by the mother. And both of them have actually shown step by step how they climb to the level of supramentalized.
Great. Very nice. Very nice.
And that is how all the words and descriptive words. And then every time the experiences change, Sri Aurobindo probably revised those lines in Savitri. Even up to the last minute.
Yes.
Even in 1948 also.
Yeah. You know how unhappy Nirodha used to be when every day he used to revise. And he was his scribe, and he used to say, now you can tear that up. So he used to say, what beautiful lines you've written, why are you tearing it up? He said, no, that's of no use anymore. He used to go, and the amount of papers that he tore, he was not allowed to keep them, by the way. What he wrote, he had to tear it up.
Right. Yeah.
So anyways, beautiful interaction. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pradeep Bhaiya.
Thank you, Bhaiya. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mukta.
मनोज जी, आप अगला कार्यक्रम.
ये पहले तो मैं प्रदीप भैया को बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ कि उन्होंने आज समय निकाला. हमारे जो भी गणमान्य साधक यहाँ हैं, अलग अलग सेंटर ब्रांचेस से, सोसाइटी के बाहर के भी बहुत सारे लोग हैं, तो मैं सबका बहुत शुक्रिया अदा करता हूँ. अजीत भैया ने बहुत विस्तार के साथ आज अपनी बात कही है. चूंकि उन्होंने अधिकतर बातें अंग्रेजी में कही, तो उसका कुछ मैं सारांश उन लोगों के लिए जिन्हें अंग्रेजी समझने में दिक्कत होती है. उन्होंने सबसे पहले बिग बैंग थ्योरी के माध्यम से क्रिएशन के विषय में बताया. उन्होंने कहा कि क्यूब हमको 3 डायमेंशनल दिखाई देता है क्योंकि उसके भीतर एक परम की चेतना है जो उस 3 डायमेंशन को होल्ड किए हुए है, और वो जितने डायमेंशन को दिखाना चाहती है उतने हमें दिखते हैं. वो उसकी प्रज्ञा प्रकाश में हम देख पाते हैं. सांख्य दर्शन में उन्होंने बताया कि 25 आयामों की बात कही गई है और 14 लोक या 14 भुवन की चर्चा हमारे पुराणों में है. फिर वे कहते हैं कि 7 चक्रों के अलावा 5 और चक्र हैं. 7 चक्रों की तो चर्चा हम लोग हमेशा पढ़ते ही है. और फिर श्री अरविंदो ने एक स्थान पर 8 गुणे 8 8 into 8 64 डायमेंशंस की चर्चा की है. सुपर स्ट्रिंग थ्योरी जो काकू ने दी है, उसमें बताया गया कि 4 और 8 के जो मल्टीपल हैं उसमें हम डायमेंशंस को पाते हैं. जैसे 4 है, 8 है, 12 है, 16 है, इस तरीके से बढ़ता जाता है. आगे जाके उन्होंने चर्चा की दो हेमिस्फीयर की, अपर हेमिस्फीयर जिसको हम लोग अपरार्ध कहते हैं और नीचे का हेमिस्फीयर जिसको हम लोग लोअर लोअर हेमिस्फीयर कहते हैं, जिसमें उन्होंने बताया कि जो अपराध है ऊपर वाला उसमें सच्चित और आनंद की चेतना है और उसका उन्होंने बारीकी से विश्लेषण किया। और नीचे का जो स्फीयर है जिसमें मन प्राण और शरीर के लोक है, और उसमें एक चीज जिसकी चर्चा अन्य स्थानों पर की गई है आज यहाँ पर मैं जोड़ना चाहता हूँ कि इन दोनों लोकों के बीच में भगवती माता विराजमान है। तो श्री अरविंद जब सावित्री में कहते हैं सी इज द गोल्डन ब्रिज द वंडरफुल फायर, तो वो जो गोल्डन ब्रिज माँ भगवती स्वयं बनी है, उन्होंने ही ये मन प्राण और शरीर का जो निचला गोलार्ध है इसको ऊपरी गोलार्ध के साथ जोड़ा है, और उनके माध्यम से ही हम इसमें निचले गोलार्ध से ऊपरी गोलार्ध में जहाँ पे आनंद के लोक है, फिर उसके ऊपर चित्त के लोक है, ऊपर सबसे ऊपर सत्य का लोक है। तो ये दोनों जो गोलार्ध है उनके बीच में माँ भगवती स्वयं उपस्थित है। भैया ने बताया कि जो माता जी के सिंबल का सहारा लेके उन्होंने एक व्याख्या की, और उन्होंने बताया कि जो चार बीच में महाशक्तियां हैं उसमें अद्वैत की उन्होंने बात की, एब्सोल्यूट की बात की, रियल वर्ल्ड की बात की, फिर स्पिरिट और मैटर की बात की, इसकी रिकॉन्सिलेशन की बात की। तो ये सब इतनी मनमोहक चर्चा है, इसको वास्तव में ठीक ही कहा गया कि इसको समझने में बहुत समय लगेगा, पर जिन लोगों ने भी इसका आनंद लिया है वो सब इस बात से कहीं ना कहीं सहमत होंगे कि ये एक ऐसी यात्रा है जिसपे हम सब जाना चाहते हैं। तो सेल्फ डिस्कवरी ही वो अंतर की यात्रा जो है, वो एक जो डायमेंशन मैं कहना चाहूँगा जिसको भैया ने कहा कि असल में जो एक्चुअल जो एक प्राइमरी डायमेंशन है वो कॉन्शियसनेस का डायमेंशन है, और जो परम पिता का सुप्रीम लॉर्ड का डायमेंशन है, जिनके माध्यम से ही हम ये कर सकते हैं। और साधना की दृष्टि से अगर हम चाहें तो साइंस में तो हम लोग पढ़ के एक्सपेरिमेंट करके ये सब कर सकते हैं, और सेल्फ डिस्कवरी की फील्ड में जब हम जाते हैं तो उसमें सरेंडर बहुत बड़ा एक आयाम होता है, जिसको हम लोग यदि पकड़ के चले तो शायद कुछ हमें समझने में भी मदद मिल सकती है। तो ये मैंने कुछ संक्षिप्त जितना सीमित समय था उसमें इन बातों को कहा, जिससे जो लोग इसमें और ज्यादा रुचि रखते हैं तो वे इसको पढ़ सकते हैं, समझ सकते हैं, चर्चा कर सकते हैं। आज यहाँ जितने लोग उपस्थित हुए हैं उन सबको मैं विशेष रूप से बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूँ, और हिंदी क्षेत्रीय समिति की ओर से ये जो कार्यक्रम चल रहा है इसमें हमारा हमेशा ये प्रयास रहता है कि अच्छे से अच्छे और विभिन्न विषयों के जो विद्वान हैं, जो श्री अरविंद और श्री माँ के माध्यम से ये जो वैचारिक यज्ञ है इसमें आए और अलग अलग विषयों पर अपनी बात रखें। डॉक्टर अजीत सबनीस का मैं विशेष रूप से धन्यवाद देता हूँ कि उन्होंने मेरे इस अनुरोध को, हिंदी क्षेत्र के इस अनुरोध को स्वीकार किया और इतने अच्छे तरीके से इस विषय को रखा। सो मैं सबको बहुत बहुत प्रणाम करता हूँ, और आप सबसे निवेदन करता हूँ कि इसी तरह ये जो हमारा वैचारिक यज्ञ है इसमें आप लोग सम्मिलित होंगे। अगले महीने फिर से हम लोग मई के महीने में आखिरी रविवार को एक नया विषय और नए वक्ता को लेकर आपके बीच में उपस्थित होंगे। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। जय श्री राम।
धन्यवाद मनोज भाई। मोनिका जी कृपया मातृ संगीत चलाएं ताकि ध्यान के बाद हम
जी मैम।
मनोज भाई मैं निकलूं?
जी भैया, वंस अगेन थैंक यू वेरी मच।
थैंक यू वेरी मच। सबको प्रणाम।
बहुत अच्छा, थैंक यू। जय मां।
भैया को भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।